Kalira felt the scorching plasma burn through her armor, searing deep into her flesh as she collapsed onto the battlefield. All around her, chaos reigned. The acrid smoke of burning machinery, the deafening explosions of plasma cannons, and the screams of the dying, both Federation and Verdani alike. Her vision blurred as blood, jade-colored, unlike the crimson of her human enemies, pooled beneath her. She had fought valiantly, as befitting a warrior of the Verdani High Command. Her blade had claimed at least a dozen Federation soldiers before that lucky shot had caught her in the side, burning through her vital organs. There would be no recovery from this wound, she knew. No Verdani healer or even their advanced medicine could save her now. With the last of her strength, Kalira gripped her ceremonial dagger, ensuring it remained in her hand even as death approached. A warrior of Verdani should die with a weapon in hand, ready to fight in the afterlife. As darkness crept in from the edges of her vision, she closed her eyes, accepting her fate. Soon, she would join her ancestors in the eternal hunting grounds beyond the veil. "Ancestors, receive your daughter," she whispered in her native tongue, the words barely audible over the din of battle. "I come to you with honor." Then, there was nothing but darkness. But instead of the eternal void she expected, or the ancestral hunting grounds of Verdani legend, Kalira awoke to the soft hum of machinery. Her eyes fluttered open, immediately squinting against the gentle but unfamiliar light. This was not the afterlife. This was not even a Verdani medical facility. The ceiling above her was smooth, pristine white, with recessed lighting that cast a sterile glow throughout what appeared to be a private room. She lay on a bed, not the hard pallet of a Verdani warrior's quarters, but something obscenely soft and yielding. To her right, a large window revealed a skyline of towering structures that could only be a Federation city, their metallic surfaces gleaming in the light of a setting sun. Panic surged through her as awareness returned. She was in enemy territory. She was alive, but how? The wound she had sustained should have been fatal. Instinctively, her hand went to her side, finding only smooth skin beneath a thin fabric garment. Some kind of patient gown by the look of it. The plasma burn was gone, replaced by a slightly discolored patch of her jade-hued skin, a scar that should have taken months to heal to this stage. Her body felt weak, drained of its usual strength, but her warrior instincts remained sharp. Kalira forced herself to sit up, ignoring the wave of dizziness that threatened to overwhelm her. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for a weapon, an exit, anything that might help her understand her situation or defend herself. She noticed several things at once. There were no restraints on her, no guards visible, and, most disturbingly, her ceremonial weapons and armor were nowhere to be seen. Instead, she wore only the thin medical gown, the fabric alien against her skin. Her long platinum white hair hung loose around her shoulders, no longer in the tight warrior's braid she had worn for years. Most alarmingly, she could see advanced medical equipment surrounding the bed, Federation technology, unmistakably. The displays showed readings she assumed were monitoring her vital signs, the alien scripts and numbers meaningless to her. As she attempted to swing her legs over the side of the bed, the door to the room slid open with a soft pneumatic hiss. Kalira tensed, prepared to fight despite her weakened state. She grabbed the closest object, a thin metal tray, and held it like a shield. The man who entered was tall, broad-shouldered, with the unmistakable bearing of a Federation soldier, though he wore no uniform now. His dark hair was cut short in military fashion, and his face bore the signs of recent conflict. A healing cut above one eyebrow, a fading bruise along his jaw. His gray eyes widened slightly at the sight of her awake and armed with a makeshift weapon. "You're awake," he said, his voice carefully neutral as he kept his distance. "That's good. The doctors weren't sure you'd make it." "Federation dog," Kalira spat, her voice raspy from disuse. "Come to finish what your soldiers started? Or am I to be your prisoner?" She kept the tray position between them, her muscles trembling with the effort of maintaining her defensive posture. The man raised his hand slowly, showing he was unarmed. My name is Marcus Tanner. I'm not here to hurt you. In fact, I'm the one who pulled you from the battlefield. Why? Kalira demanded, not lowering her improvised shield. Why would a Federation soldier save a Verdani? We are enemies. You have slaughtered my people for generations. Marcus's expression tightened, a flash of what might have been guilt crossing his features. I couldn't leave you there, he said simply. Then, after a moment's hesitation, he added, we might have more in common than you think. We may share the same enemy now. Kalira laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the quiet room. The Federation has been systematically exterminating my people for decades. You've destroyed our colonies, poisoned our homeworld, hunted us across the stars like animals. And now you claim we have a common enemy? The only enemy I recognize is standing before me. I'm not the Federation, Marcus said quietly. Not anymore. He moved slowly to a chair positioned against the wall, maintaining eye contact with her as he sat down, deliberately placing himself lower than her standing position, a tactical disadvantage that wasn't lost on Kalira. I've seen things, done things, that I can't reconcile with anymore. I'm not who I was. Something in his tone gave Kalira pause. There was a weariness there, a heaviness that spoke of burdens carried too long. Still, she didn't lower her guard. Federation soldiers were known for their deception. You expect me to believe that a Federation elite soldier had a sudden change of heart? In the middle of a war. She winced as a sharp pain lanced through her side, reminding her of her still healing wound. Marcus noticed her discomfort. You should sit down. The regeneration treatment is still working. You'll tear the new tissue if you strain yourself. When she didn't move, he sighed. Look, I understand your suspicion. In your position, I'd feel the same. But right now, you have two choices. Trust me enough to hear what I have to say, or try to escape, weakened and unarmed, into a Federation metropolis where your skin color alone will get you captured or killed within minutes. The logic was inescapable, much as Kalira hated to admit it. Slowly, she lowered the tray, though she kept it within reach. She eased herself back onto the edge of the bed, her eyes never leaving Marcus. Speak then, Federation. Tell me why I should believe anything you say. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. 6 months ago, I was stationed on Artones 4, a small mining colony on the edge of Verdani space. My unit was tasked with securing the area, which usually meant clearing out any Verdani settlements. He paused, his gaze dropping to his clasped hands. We found a small encampment, mostly civilians, researchers studying the local ecosystem. The orders came down. No prisoners, no witnesses. Kalira's jaw tightened. She had heard of such atrocities before, had lost friends and family to similar security operations. My squad leader was eager to comply, Marcus continued. Too eager. When I objected, suggested we at least spare the children, he reminded me that Verdani spawn grow into Verdani warriors. Then he ordered me to be the one to set the charges on their shelters while they slept. A muscle worked in Marcus's jaw. I set the charges as ordered, but I also triggered the camp's environmental alarm system before detonating them remotely. Most of the Verdani escaped into the forest. My squad leader was furious. There was an investigation. They found my fingerprints on the alarm system. And yet you live, Kalira observed coldly. The punishment for such insubordination is death, is it not? It should have been, Marcus agreed. But my father was General Arthur Tanner. His influence kept me from execution, but not from being reassigned to a suicide mission at the front lines, the battle where I found you. The name sent a chill through Kalira. General Tanner was well known among the Verdani, a brutal tactician responsible for some of the most devastating campaigns against her people. That this man was his son complicated things considerably. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice slightly less hostile than before. Because what I discovered after Artones 4 is far worse than anything you've seen in open combat. Marcus reached slowly into his pocket and withdrew a small data chip. After my disciplinary hearing, I was approached by an old friend from the academy, now working in Federation intelligence. He'd been investigating disappearances within the military, soldiers and scientists who raised questions about certain operations, then vanished. He was scared, said he'd found something called Project Chimera. 2 days later, he was dead, an accident during a routine training exercise. Marcus held out the data chip. He gave me this before he died. It's encrypted, but what I've been able to access. He shook his head. It's not just about winning the war anymore. It's about wiping your species from existence, and possibly others that might pose a threat to Federation supremacy. Kalira stared at the chip, conflict warring within her. Everything she had been taught as a warrior told her to never trust a Federation soldier. But the sincerity in Marcus's voice, the evidence of his disillusionment, and most importantly, the fact that he had saved her life when he could have easily let her die, gave her pause. How do I know this isn't an elaborate trap? She asked, though her tone lacked its earlier venom. You don't, Marcus admitted. Not yet, but I need your help to stop what's coming, and you need mine to survive long enough to warn your people. He stood slowly. There's a medical station across the hall with pain management options if you need them. I suggest you take something. We need to leave soon. The medical systems in this apartment are registered to my father's account. If someone checks the logs and finds I've been treating a Verdani, as if on cue, a sharp, insistent alarm began to sound from one of the monitors beside the bed. Marcus cursed, moving quickly to the console. Security scan, he said grimly. They've detected non-human biosignatures in the building. We have minutes, maybe less. He turned to Kalira. Decision time, warrior. Come with me, or take your chances with Federation security forces. Kalira hesitated only a moment before sliding completely off the bed, steadying herself against its edge. If what you say is true, then my people need to know. I will go with you for now. But know this, Federation. At the first sign of treachery, I will kill you without hesitation. Marcus actually smiled slightly at that. I'd expect nothing less. Can you walk? I am Kalira of the 5th Verdani Battle Circle. I can fight with 3 broken limbs and still take down an enemy. I can walk. Good, Marcus said, moving to a cabinet and retrieving a bundle of clothing. Put these on. The hood should help conceal your features until we're somewhere safer. He turned his back, giving her privacy as she quickly changed from the medical gown into the dark, nondescript garments. The clothing was clearly human in design, but practical. Dark pants, a long-sleeved shirt, and a hooded jacket that would help conceal her distinctive jade skin and white hair. As she dressed, Kalira noted that Marcus was checking a small weapon, a Federation pulse pistol, before tucking it into a concealed holster. Ready? He asked, not turning until she gave the affirmative. As ready as I can be, unarmed in enemy territory, she replied, pulling the hood forward to shadow her face. We'll remedy the unarmed parts soon, Marcus promised, moving to the door and checking a small device that presumably monitored the hallway outside. Stay close. Down the service corridor, then the maintenance elevator. We need to get to the lower levels before they lock down the building. With a deep breath, Kalira prepared herself for whatever lay ahead. She was Verdani, a warrior-born. She had faced death without fear. She could face this uncertainty with the same courage. As they slipped into the corridor and hurried toward their escape route, one thought burned in her mind. If this human was telling the truth, then the stakes were higher than any battle she had ever fought. And if he was lying, well, even weakened, she would make sure he paid for his deception with his life. The alarms continued to wail behind them as they descended into the bowels of the Federation city. 2 unlikely allies bound by circumstance and the shadow of a threat that might soon engulf them all. Marcus led Kalira through a labyrinthine network of service corridors, his movements betraying intimate knowledge of the building's layout. They descended rapidly, bypassing the main elevator systems in favor of narrow maintenance shafts and emergency stairwells rarely used by the building's privileged occupants. Security response will start at the top and work down, Marcus explained in a hushed tone as they paused at a junction. Standard procedure for biosignature breaches. They'll expect whatever triggered the alarm to try to go up and out. We're doing the opposite. Kalira nodded, conserving her breath. The physical exertion was taking its toll on her still healing body, but she refused to show weakness. Your Federation's arrogance works in our favor. They never expect enemies to go deeper into their territory. A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's lips. One of many tactical blind spots I've noticed over the years. They continued downward, finally emerging into what appeared to be a massive underground complex, a stark contrast to the gleaming luxury of the upper levels. Here, the pristine surfaces gave way to utilitarian metal and concrete, the air heavy with the scent of machinery and too many bodies in too little space. The Undercity, Marcus explained, leading her through crowded passageways where humans of various stations hurried about their business. The foundation of every Federation metropolis, where the workers live, where the machines that keep everything running are maintained. Down here, security is more concerned with keeping people in their place than looking for alien infiltrators. Kalira pulled her hood lower, hyper-aware of how quickly discovery would come if anyone caught a glimpse of her jade skin or noticed the subtle differences in her facial structure, the slightly larger eyes, the more pronounced cheekbones that marked her Verdani heritage. They navigated through markets selling questionable goods, past cramped housing units stacked like cargo containers, and through dim corridors where security cameras hung broken or disabled. The further they went, the more Kalira realized how little she truly knew about the Federation beyond the battlefield. These humans lived in conditions that would shame a Verdani commander if they were imposed on prisoners of war, yet they were supposedly citizens of the mighty Federation. Finally, Marcus stopped at a nondescript door in a particularly grim section of the Undercity. He knocked in a precise pattern, waited, then repeated it with a slight variation. After a moment, the door slid open just enough to reveal a narrow face with suspicious eyes. "You're late," the person said, their voice low and raspy. "Complications," Marcus replied. "We need sanctuary." The eyes narrowed further, then widened as they caught sight of Kalira behind him. "You brought one of them here? Are you insane?" "Probably," Marcus acknowledged, "but it's necessary. Trust me, Elias." After a tense moment, the door opened wider. "Inside, quickly, before someone sees." They slipped inside what appeared to be a small, cluttered apartment. The door sealed behind them with the heavy thunk of multiple locks engaging. Their host, Elias, was a thin, nervous-looking man with the pallid complexion of someone who rarely saw natural light. Despite his apparent fragility, Kalira noted the way he moved, precise, economical motions that spoke of military training. "Former Federation intelligence," Marcus explained, noticing her assessment. "Now he helps people disappear when the Federation decides they know too much." Elias snorted. "A charitable description of what I do." He turned to Kalira, making no attempt to hide his unease. "So, a Verdani warrior in my home. Never thought I'd see the day." "Nor I," Kalira replied coolly, "that I would seek shelter from a Federation intelligence officer." "Former," Elias corrected. "Very, very former. After what I saw in the Osiris sector, I couldn't." He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. What matters is why Marcus has taken the suicidal risk of smuggling you into the heart of Federation territory." Marcus pulled out the data chip he had shown Kalira earlier. "We need your help decrypting this. All of it this time, not just the fragments I could access before." Elias took the chip, examining it with narrowed eyes. "Military-grade encryption, from the look of it. Where did you get this?" "Darius," Marcus said simply. The name clearly meant something to Elias, whose face paled even further. "Darius gave you this? Before he—" "Yes, and I think what's on it is why he died." Elias nodded grimly. "Give me a few hours. In the meantime, your companion looks like she might collapse. There's food in the kitchen, and the couch folds out if she needs to rest." As Elias disappeared into what appeared to be a home office filled with electronic equipment, Marcus guided Kalira to a worn couch. "You should rest while you can." Kalira wanted to protest, to insist she was fine, but even her warrior's pride had limits. The escape from the upper levels had drained what little strength she had recovered. She sank onto the couch, wincing as her healing wound protested. I will rest, she conceded. But first I want answers. The full truth, Marcus Tanner. Why did you really save me from that battlefield? A crisis of conscience over your father's war crimes doesn't explain risking your life to save an enemy soldier. Marcus sighed, rubbing a hand over his face before sitting across from her. The truth? I recognized your insignia on the battlefield. 5th Battle Circle. You're not just any warrior. You're senior command, probably with direct access to the Verdani High Council. Kalira's eyes narrowed. So I was right. I am a prisoner, a valuable hostage or intelligence asset. No, Marcus shook his head. Not a prisoner. A potential ally. What's on that ship, Project Chimera? It's not something I can stop alone. It's not even something I can stop with just human allies. If what I glimpsed in the partial decryption is accurate, then we need the Verdani leadership to know what's coming. And you're my best chance of getting that information to them. And what exactly is Project Chimera? Kalira pressed. You've spoken of it as a threat, but you've been vague on details. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping despite the privacy of their location. From what I've pieced together, it's a bioweapon, something specifically engineered to target Verdani physiology. Not just to kill, but to, he hesitated, to alter, to weaponize your people against each other somehow. The documents I could access mentioned genetic restructuring and behavioral modification on a cellular level. A cold dread settled in Kalira's stomach. Genetic weaponry is forbidden under the Arcturus Convention. Even the Federation signed those accords. The same Federation that uses plasma weapons on civilian targets? Marcus asked with a bitter smile. Conventions and treaties mean nothing to certain factions within Federation leadership, particularly the Purity Front. The what? A movement within Federation military and political circles, Marcus explained. They believe humanity's destiny is to rule the stars alone. Other species are either potential threats to be eliminated or resources to be exploited. My father, he paused, his expression hardening. My father is one of their leaders. Kalira absorbed this information, her tactical mind already calculating implications. If such a weapon were deployed against my people, it would be genocide, Marcus finished. Or worse, depending on what the modification aspect entails. And from the fragments I decrypted, they're close to deployment stage. The first target is likely to be the Verdani refugee settlement on Proxima 3. Proxima 3? Kalira's blood ran cold. There are over 100,000 civilians there, mostly children and elders evacuated from our frontier worlds. Exactly. A contained population for their first field test. Marcus's disgust was palpable. That's why we need to act quickly. Before Kalira could respond, a strangled cry came from Elias's office. They both tensed, Marcus drawing his weapon as they moved toward the sound. They found Elias staring at his display, his face ashen. I got through the first layer of encryption, he said without looking up. Marcus, this is worse than we thought. Much worse. On the screen were schematics of what appeared to be some kind of delivery system, a missile or probe of some kind, alongside genetic sequences that meant nothing to Marcus but caused Kalira to inhale sharply. That's Verdani genetic code, she said, her voice tight. But altered, corrupted somehow. It's not just a bioweapon, Elias said, his finger tracing a section of text. It's a complete genetic rewriting tool. According to this, it would transform Verdani on a cellular level, making them compliant, docile, perfect for, he swallowed hard, for slave labor. And the altered subjects would spread the modification through any contact with unaffected Verdani. It's a cascading genetic plague. When? Marcus demanded. When is deployment scheduled? Elias scrolled through the data. 3 days from now. A covert launch from the Chimera facility in Sector 7, disguised as a routine satellite deployment. Sector 7 is here. In this city, Marcus said, his mind racing. That's why I was transferred back here after the incident on Artonis 4. They wanted me under observation while the project entered final stages. We have to stop it, Kalira said, her warrior resolve hardening her voice despite her physical weakness. We must destroy this weapon before it can be deployed. Agreed, Marcus nodded. But we'll need help. Elias, The resistance contacts you mentioned before, the sympathizers within the military and science divisions. Can you reach them? Elias nodded hesitantly. Some of them. But breaking into a military research facility in Sector 7? That's suicide, even with insider help. We need more allies, Kalira said firmly. And I know where to find them. There is a Verdani resistance cell in this city, survivors of the Federation's pacification campaigns who now work to sabotage your war machine from within. If we can contact them, how do you know this? Marcus asked, surprised. Kalira gave him a grim smile. Because I helped establish it before I was reassigned to frontline command. The 5th Battle Circle isn't just a combat unit. We're also responsible for deep cover operations. Can you still contact them? After being presumed dead on the battlefield. There are protocols, Kalira confirmed. Recognition codes that would identify me regardless of how long I've been gone. But I need access to a secure communication node, and those will all be monitored by Federation security. Elias cleared his throat. Not all of them. I might know a communications hub in the industrial sector that the Resistance has used before. It's risky but possible. Marcus nodded decisively. Then we have a starting point. Elias, gather what intel you can from that ship, anything that might help us infiltrate the Chimera facility. Kalira and I will make contact with the Verdani Resistance. You're really going through with this, Elias said, looking between them with a mixture of awe and terror. A Federation soldier and a Verdani warrior, working together to sabotage a top-secret military project. Former Federation soldier. Marcus corrected. And yes, we are. Because some lines shouldn't be crossed, even in war. Especially in war, Kalira added quietly, as they prepared to leave. Gathering the few supplies Elias could provide, Kalira found herself studying Marcus Tanner with new eyes. There was a conviction to him that reminded her of her own warriors, a sense of purpose that transcended personal safety. It was not what she had expected to find in a human, much less the son of her people's greatest enemy. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to these humans than she had been taught to believe. Or perhaps Marcus Tanner was simply the exception that proved the rule. Either way, their fates were now intertwined in a desperate mission that would either save her people or lead them both to certain death. As they slipped back into the shadowy corridors of the Undercity, Kalira felt something she had not expected, a fragile, tentative trust beginning to form. Not friendship, not yet understanding, but a mutual recognition of the stakes and a shared determination to prevent a crime that would stain the stars themselves. The industrial sector was a maze of massive factories, processing plants, and warehouses that formed the manufacturing heart of the Federation city. Automated systems handled most of the labor, but human supervisors and maintenance crews moved throughout the complex, providing Kalira and Marcus with cover as they navigated toward the communications hub Elias had identified. "Stay close," Marcus murmured as they passed a security checkpoint, his arm casually around Kalira's shoulders as if they were simply a couple of workers heading to their shift. The gesture was practical. It helped conceal her alien features, but Kalira couldn't help noticing the strange intimacy of it, the unfamiliar warmth of human contact that wasn't combative. They reached a nondescript utility building nestled between two larger facilities. According to Elias, it housed backup communications relays that connected to the city's primary network. More importantly, it was minimally staffed and had several blind spots in its security coverage, blind spots that the various underground networks of the city had been exploiting for years. Using the access codes Elias had provided, Marcus bypassed the exterior lock, and they slipped inside. The interior was dim, illuminated only by the status lights of various equipment racks. "The terminal we need should be on the second level," Marcus said, consulting the schematic Elias had uploaded to his portable device. "It's isolated from the main network for emergency protocols, which means it's less monitored but still has the range we need." They made their way up a narrow stairwell and into a small control room lined with communication equipment. Marcus stood guard at the door while Kalira approached the terminal, her fingers hovering over the unfamiliar interface. "Can you operate it?" Marcus asked, noting her hesitation. Federation technology is not entirely alien to me, Kalira replied, studying the controls. We've captured enough of your equipment over the years to understand the basics. After a moment's consideration, she began inputting commands, navigating through the system with increasing confidence. I need to send a specific signal pattern on an ultra-low frequency, she explained as she worked. It will appear as background noise to your monitoring systems, but to Verdani ears and technology, it carries a distinct message. Marcus watched, impressed despite himself, as Kalira manipulated the controls with growing assurance. For someone handling enemy technology while still recovering from near-fatal injuries, her focus was remarkable. When she finished, she stepped back from the console. Now we wait. If there are still Verdani resistance operatives in the city, they will respond within the hour, assuming they trust the signal enough to risk exposure. And if they don't respond? Marcus asked. Kalira's expression hardened. Then we proceed alone, with only your human allies. The weapon must be destroyed, regardless of the cost. They settled into a tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the minutes ticked by. Finally, Marcus spoke again, his voice low. Why did you become a warrior? He asked, curiosity momentarily overriding caution. Was it always your path, or did the war with the Federation make the choice for you? Kalira considered him for a long moment before answering. I was born into the warrior caste. My parents were both commanders in the Verdani Defense Forces before your Federation's expansion reached our worlds. But I chose to remain on that path, even when other options were available. A hint of pride entered her voice. I earned my place in the 5th Battle Circle through combat trials and strategic assessments, not merely through birthright. The Federation military propaganda portrays Verdani warriors as fanatical, born and bred for violence. Marcus said carefully, I'm beginning to see how much of what we're taught is distortion. And we are taught that humans are cruel conquerors who value expansion over all else, that you lack honor and would rather bomb a world from orbit than face an enemy in equal combat, Kalira responded. Perhaps there's distortion on both sides. Before Marcus could respond, the communication terminal emitted a soft chime. Kalira moved quickly to examine the incoming signal. They've responded, she said, tension and hope mingling in her voice. With the correct countersign, she input another series of commands, then looked up with renewed determination. They've provided coordinates for a meeting point. It's in a manufacturing district, 2 sectors from here. Marcus nodded, relieved. We should move quickly. The longer we stay in one place, the greater the risk of detection. As they prepared to leave, Kalira paused, studying Marcus with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. Why did you join the Federation military? She asked, turning his earlier question back on him. Was it family tradition because of your father, or did you truly believe in the cause? Both, I suppose, Marcus admitted after a moment's consideration. My family has served in the military for generations. My father's reputation, it cast a long shadow. I wanted to live up to that legacy. His expression darkened. It wasn't until I was deep in it, seeing the reality of what we were doing on frontier worlds, to your people and others, that I began to question what that legacy truly meant. Kalira nodded, not offering judgment or absolution, merely acknowledgement of his answer. We should go, she said, turning toward the exit. But there was something different in her demeanor now, a subtle shift that suggested his words had made an impact, however small. They made their way back into the industrial labyrinth, moving with purpose toward the meeting coordinates. The manufacturing district was busier than the utility sector, with more workers and security personnel to navigate around. They adopted the personas of maintenance technicians, using the credentials Elias had provided to pass through checkpoints with minimal scrutiny. The meeting point turned out to be an abandoned assembly facility, its production lines silent and gathering dust after being replaced by newer automation elsewhere. They entered cautiously, alert for traps or surveillance. Hello, Marcus called out tentatively as they reached the main floor of the facility. Silence answered them, broken only by the distant sounds of machinery from neighboring buildings. Then, from the shadows above, A voice spoke in the melodic but sharp tones of the Verdani language. Identify yourself. Warrior who carries the signal of the fifth circle. Kalira responded in the same language, her voice carrying a formal cadence that suggested ritual. After a brief exchange that Marcus couldn't understand, several figures emerged from hiding places throughout the facility, at least 6 Verdani, all armed with a mixture of Federation weapons and their own traditional blades. Their leader stepped forward, a female Verdani with dark jade skin and intricate scarification across her exposed arms that Marcus recognized as military rank markings. She was shorter than Kalira, but moved with the same predatory grace, her eyes never leaving Marcus even as she addressed her fellow Verdani. "I am Terran, commander of the Shadow Hand Cell," she said in accented but precise Federation standard, clearly for Marcus's benefit. "And you are Kalira of the Fifth Circle, presumed dead after the Battle of Vega's Edge." Her gaze sharpened. "Yet here you stand, in the company of a Federation soldier, son of General Tanner, no less. This requires explanation." Kalira straightened to her full height, meeting Terran's challenging stare. "This man saved my life on the battlefield and has brought evidence of a threat greater than anything our people have faced." She gestured to Marcus. "Show her." Marcus slowly reached into his pocket and withdrew the data chip, then activated his portable display to show the information Elias had decrypted. "Project Chimera," he explained, watching as Terran's expression shifted from suspicion to horrified understanding as she reviewed the data. "A genetic weapon designed to enslave the Verdani race, scheduled for deployment in less than 3 days." "By all the ancestors," Terran whispered, looking up from the display. "This will be the end of our people as we know them." "It must be stopped," Kalira stated firmly. "We need your help to infiltrate the facility where the weapon is being prepared." Terran was silent for a long moment, her eyes moving between Kalira, Marcus, and the damning evidence on the display. Finally, she nodded sharply. "The Shadow Hand will assist you," she decided. "But know this, human, if this is some elaborate trap, I will personally ensure that your death comes slowly and painfully." "If this were a trap," Marcus replied evenly, "I wouldn't be here in person with information that could see me executed for treason." A hint of grudging respect showed in Terran's eyes. She turned to her companions and issued orders in rapid Verdani. Immediately, her warriors dispersed to various positions throughout the facility, clearly preparing for a strategic meeting. "Come," she said to Marcus and Kalira. "Our planning chamber is secure." They followed Terran deeper into the abandoned facility, through a maze of defunct assembly lines and storage areas, until they reached what appeared to be a former supervisor's office. Inside, the corporate furniture had been replaced with a rough table covered in maps and communication equipment. The windows were blacked out, and subtle jamming devices hummed in the corners, preventing electronic surveillance. As Terran's lieutenants gathered around the table, Marcus noted the diversity among the Verdani resistance fighters. While all shared the characteristic jade skin and sharp features of their species, they varied in height, build, and the patterns of ritual scarification that denoted their clan affiliations and military specialties. Some were clearly warriors like Kalira, while others moved with the precision of technicians or the watchful eyes of intelligence operatives. "Now," Terran said once everyone had assembled, "tell us everything. Leave nothing out." Over the next hour, Marcus and Kalira took turns explaining the discovery of Project Chimera, the nature of the genetic weapon, and what little they knew about the facility where it was being prepared for deployment. Marcus provided the Federation security protocols and structural information, while Kalira offered tactical insights and strategic priorities from a Verdani perspective. "The weapon delivery system is scheduled for testing in 3 days, Marcus concluded. "According to the data we've recovered, that test is actually the first deployment, targeting the Proxima 3 settlement." A ripple of anger passed through the assembled Verdani. One of Terran's lieutenants, a battle-scarred male with a cybernetic eye replacement, spoke up. "My family is on Proxima 3, he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "My mate and 2 young ones were evacuated there when the Federation took our colony world." Terran placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we fight not just for our race, Varric, but for your blood as well. She turned to Marcus. Your plan to infiltrate the facility. It has merit, but it lacks specific knowledge of the internal security systems and personnel rotations. That's where I hope your network can help. Marcus acknowledged. My contact Elias can provide general schematics, but detailed information about the project itself. We may be able to assist with that, interrupted another Verdani. This one clearly more of a technician than a warrior. We have been monitoring communications from several key Federation research facilities, including Sector 7. While we didn't know the nature of Project Chimera, we have gathered data on access protocols, shift changes, and security patrol patterns. Hope flickered in Kalira's eyes. That could make the difference between success and failure. There is one more resource we should consider, Terran said, her expression calculating. The human resistance. Marcus looked up sharply. There's an organized human resistance movement? Terran's mouth curved into what might have been a smile on a human face, but on her Verdani features appeared more predatory. Did you think your kind were the only ones who could form resistance cells? There are humans who oppose Federation expansion policies and military aggression. Scientists, philosophers, former soldiers like yourself who saw too much. We have an arrangement. Limited cooperation for mutual benefit. Can you contact them? Kalira asked. Already done, Terran replied, nodding to one of her operatives who was working at a communications console. I sent word when I received your signal. They're sending a representative. As if on cue, a soft alert tone sounded from one of the security monitors. A moment later, a side door opened, and a human woman entered the room. She was tall and lean, with close-cropped gray hair and the confident bearing of someone comfortable in dangerous situations. Despite her age, Marcus guessed mid-60s, she moved with a fighter's grace. Dr. Eleanor Chun, Terran introduced her. Former Federation medical director, now a leader in the human resistance. Former director and current fugitive, Eleanor corrected with a tight smile. Her eyes found Marcus, widening slightly in recognition. Tanner's boy. Well, this is a surprise. Last I heard, you were following in Daddy's footsteps quite nicely. Things change, Marcus replied simply. So they do. Eleanor turned her attention to Kalira, her clinical gaze assessing the Verdani warrior's condition. You recently recovered from plasma trauma. Federation regeneration treatment by the look of it, but you're still not at full strength. Kalira stiffened. I am combat ready. You're at perhaps 60% capacity, and that's being generous, Eleanor countered. She glanced at the data displayed on the table. But given what you're planning, I understand the necessity. She turned to address the entire group. My network has been tracking unusual supply movements to the Sector 7 facility for months. Specialized containment units, genetic sequencing equipment, military-grade delivery systems with biological payload capacity. We suspected a bioweapon, but the specifics. She shook her head after reviewing the Project Chimera details. This is unconscionable. Can your people help us stop it? Marcus asked. Eleanor nodded firmly. We have 2 scientists working inside the facility who can provide access and distraction. Furthermore, I can offer medical support to enhance Kalira's recovery before the operation. A Verdani-adapted stimulant package that will temporarily restore her to near full combat capacity. At what cost? Kalira asked suspiciously. Significant physical toll after it wears off, Eleanor admitted. But it would give you the strength you need for the mission. I'll take it, Kalira said without hesitation. Marcus opened his mouth to object, then closed it. It wasn't his place to question her decision. She knew the risks and her own capabilities better than he did. Very well, Terran said, turning back to the tactical display. Let us plan the details of this operation. We have much to do and little time. Over the next several hours, a plan took shape. Elias, communicating remotely through encrypted channels, provided additional Federation security protocols. Terran's technicians matched these with their own intelligence on the facility. Eleanor's contacts inside confirmed key details and provided updated access codes. The operation would have 3 components: a primary infiltration team led by Marcus and Kalira, targeting the central laboratory where the weapon was being prepared. A secondary team of Verdani commandos who would plant explosives at key structural points to ensure complete destruction of the facility. And a diversionary attack by Eleanor's human resistance members on a separate Federation installation to draw away security forces. As the planning session wound down, the various team members dispersed to prepare equipment, review their assignments, or rest before the coming mission. Kalira found herself alone with Marcus in a small side room that had been designated as temporary quarters for them. The space was Spartan, little more than 2 narrow cots, a small table, and a water dispenser, but it offered something precious, privacy and a moment of quiet before the storm that was to come. Kalira sat heavily on one of the cots, finally allowing her exhaustion to show now that no other warriors were present to witness it. Marcus handed her a container of water, which she accepted with a nod of thanks. "You should rest," he said, sitting on the cot opposite hers. "Tomorrow will be intense, and you're still healing." "I have endured worse," Kalira replied, though without her usual defiance. After a moment's hesitation, she added, "But you are right. I will need my strength." They sat in surprisingly comfortable silence for a while, each processing the events that had brought them to this improbable alliance. Finally, Kalira spoke again, her voice quiet but intent. "Why did you really save me, Marcus Tanner? You knew who I was on the battlefield, a high-ranking Verdani commander. The tactical value is clear. But there is more to it, isn't there?" Marcus looked down at his hands, considering his answer carefully. "There is," he admitted. "The day before that battle, I received a message from my father. He congratulated me on my opportunity for redemption in the coming engagement, said that distinguished service might restore my standing." A bitter smile crossed his face. "That's when I knew the battle was designed to be a slaughter, a setup to eliminate a significant portion of your command structure in one engagement. A trap," Kalira concluded, her expression darkening. "Yes, and I had been positioned to play a key role in it, without even knowing." He met her gaze directly. "When I saw you fall on the battlefield, I recognized the insignia of the 5th Battle Circle. I knew what your death would mean strategically. But more than that, I saw a chance to reject everything my father stands for, to save a life he had specifically marked for destruction. So I was a symbol of your rebellion," Kalira said, her tone unreadable. "At first, Marcus acknowledged. But then, when I was treating your wounds, trying to keep you alive during extraction, it became more than that. You weren't just a Verdani commander anymore. You were a person, a warrior who had fought honorably and deserved better than to die as a pawn in my father's schemes." He paused. "And when I discovered Project Chimera, I knew that saving you might have been the most important decision of my life. Not just as an act of defiance, but because you might be the key to stopping something truly monstrous." Kalira absorbed his words, her expression thoughtful. "Among my people, we have a concept, Asterisk Shaktir VA star. It means the honorable enemy, one who fights against you with skill and courage, but without cruelty or malice." Her eyes met his. "I did not believe such a thing existed among humans. I am reconsidering that position. Coming from a Verdani warrior, it was high praise indeed." Marcus inclined his head in acknowledgement of the significant concession. "We should rest now," Kalira said, settling back onto her cot. "Tomorrow, we move against your father's weapon." "Not my father's anymore," Marcus corrected quietly. "Not my Federation anymore, either. Tomorrow, we fight for something else entirely." As they each retreated into their thoughts, preparing mentally for the dangerous day ahead, a fragile but unmistakable trust had formed between them, a bridge across decades of hatred and misunderstanding. Whether it would be strong enough to survive what was to come remained to be seen, but for now, in this quiet moment, it existed as a small light against the darkness they faced. Morning came too quickly, heralded by the purposeful movements of Terran's resistance fighters preparing for the mission. Dr. Eleanor arrived early, carrying a small medical case containing the stimulant treatment for Kalira. "This will hurt," she warned as she prepared the injection. The compound is designed to accelerate your natural healing processes while temporarily enhancing your strength and reflexes. Your body won't appreciate the forced recovery. Kalira merely nodded, extending her arm. Pain is familiar territory for a warrior. The injection glowed faintly with bioluminescent particles as Eleanor administered it directly into Kalira's main arterial pathway. Almost immediately, Kalira's body tensed, her jaw clenching as the compound surged through her system. To her credit, she didn't cry out, though beads of sweat formed on her forehead as the stimulant package did its work. After several intense minutes, her breathing steadied, and she rose to her feet with a fluid grace that had been absent since her injury. She flexed her hands, testing her restored strength, then executed a rapid series of combat movements that would have been impossible the day before. Impressive, Marcus commented, genuinely awed by the transformation. It won't last, Eleanor cautioned. 36 hours at most before the crash comes. And when it does, it will hit hard. It will be enough, Kalira stated with quiet confidence. The final briefing was concise. Timing was critical. The diversionary attack would begin at precisely 14:30, drawing security forces away from the main facility. Marcus, Kalira, and a small joint team of human and Verdani operatives would use that window to infiltrate through a maintenance access point identified by their intelligence. Remember, Terran emphasized, complete destruction is the only acceptable outcome. If even fragments of the delivery system or genetic material remain intact, they could reconstruct the project. Understood, Marcus confirmed. Nothing survives. They moved out in small groups, using separate routes to avoid detection, all converging on staging points near the Sector 7 facility. Marcus and Kalira traveled with Eleanor through maintenance tunnels that connected the various industrial sectors, utilizing the doctor's credentials to pass security checkpoints without raising alarms. The Chimera facility itself was an unassuming structure, deliberately designed to blend in with the surrounding industrial buildings. Its true nature was hidden behind the facade of a standard Federation research installation, its heavily secured interior protected by layers of security that would have been impenetrable without their inside intelligence. At precisely 14:25, they took position near the maintenance access point. Eleanor checked her communications device, confirming that her resistance members were in position for the diversion. 5 minutes, she said quietly. Once we're inside, I'll need to split off to rendezvous with my people at the secondary containment area. The primary weapon prototype will be in the central laboratory. Marcus nodded, checking his weapon one final time, a Federation pulse rifle with the identifying markers removed. Beside him, Kalira adjusted the straps of the explosive charges she would be responsible for placing in the laboratory. She had also been provided with a traditional Verdani blade, a gesture from Terran that held significant cultural meaning, returning a warrior's honor by ensuring she would not go into battle unarmed. At 14:30 exactly, their communications crackled with a simple coded message, "Sundown initiated." Moments later, distant alarms began to sound from the direction of the Federation. Security Command Center 3 sectors away, the target of the diversionary attack. Eleanor's contact within the facility, a scientist named Yara, transmitted the all-clear signal. The maintenance hatch opened, revealing a dimly lit service corridor beyond. Movement in the main security hub came Elias's voice through their secure channel. 80% of security forces responding to the diversion, as predicted. You have approximately 20 minutes before they realize it's a feint. They moved swiftly through the service corridor, following the memorized route to the heart of the facility. The few technicians they encountered were quickly subdued, not killed, at Marcus's insistence, but restrained and sedated. They're mostly civilian researchers, he had argued during planning. Many may not even know what they're really working on. Their first significant resistance came at the entrance to the central laboratory complex, a pair of armed guards who, unlike the technicians, were clearly military and aware of the facility's true purpose. Marcus and Kalira moved in perfect synchronization, she drawing the guard's attention with a flanking movement while he disabled them with precisely aimed stun blasts. The efficiency of their teamwork would have been remarkable under any circumstances. Between former enemies, it was nothing short of extraordinary. Beyond the security checkpoint lay the culmination of their mission, a vast laboratory space centered around a missile-like delivery system surrounded by workstations filled with genetic sequencing equipment. The prototype weapon hung suspended in a launch cradle, its sleek design belying the horrific purpose it had been built to serve. "Begin placing the charges," Marcus directed as they secured the laboratory. "I'll download the research data for evidence." Kalira moved methodically around the chamber, placing explosive devices at structural weak points while Marcus connected to the main research terminal. As the data transfer began, he scanned through the files, his expression growing increasingly grim. "This goes beyond what we thought," he said, his voice tight. "The weapon isn't just designed for Verdani. There are genetic markers for at least 3 other non-human species in the database. This was meant to be the first of many. A comprehensive xenocide program," Kalira confirmed, her face hard as she set the final charge. "Destroying this facility isn't enough. The galaxy needs to know what was planned here." "Agreed," Marcus said, securing the data download. "That's why we're taking everything. Every record, every name involved, every authorization code." A slow, deliberate clapping sound interrupted him. Both spun toward the laboratory entrance, weapons raised, to find a tall, distinguished-looking man in a Federation military uniform adorned with general's insignia. Behind him stood at least 6 heavily armed soldiers, weapons trained on Marcus and Kalira. "Well done, son," said General Arthur Tanner, his voice cold despite the false warmth of his words. "You've led us right to the Verdani infiltrators, just as expected." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Father," Kalira tensed beside him, her hand shifting toward the detonator for the explosives, but a warning gesture from Marcus stopped her. The general's soldiers were too well positioned. They would be cut down before they could trigger the charges. "Did you really think your little rebellion wasn't being monitored?" General Tanner asked, stepping further into the laboratory with the casual confidence of a man who believed himself completely in control. "Your secure communications, your resistance contacts, we've been tracking them for months, waiting for an opportunity like this." The diversion attack, Marcus realized. "You knew it was coming." "Of course," the general confirmed with a dismissive wave. "A perfect opportunity to round up the human sympathizers while simultaneously capturing a high-value Verdani operative." His cold gaze shifted to Kalira. "The infamous Kalira of the 5th Battle Circle. Your survival was unexpected, but ultimately useful. Once Project Chimera is complete, having a subject of your genetic purity will be invaluable for final calibrations." Kalira's expression remained stoic, but Marcus could sense the rage building within her, not just at the general's words, but at the implication that their entire mission had been compromised from the start. "You're making a mistake, Father," Marcus said carefully, his mind racing for a way out of their predicament. "This weapon violates every ethical standard the Federation claims to uphold. It's not warfare, it's genocide. It's evolution, my boy," General Tanner corrected, his voice taking on the tone of a disappointed lecturer. "Humanity securing its rightful place in the galaxy. The strong prevail, the weak are subjugated or eliminated. It's the natural order. There's nothing natural about this," Marcus countered, subtly shifting his position to place himself between the general's forces and Kalira. He could only hope that Eleanor and the others had detected the trap and aborted their part of the mission. The general sighed, looking genuinely regretful. "I had such hopes for you, Marcus. Such potential. But sentimentality has always been your weakness." He gestured to his soldiers. "Secure them both. The Verdani for the laboratory, my son for court-martial." As the soldiers moved forward, the laboratory lights suddenly flickered, then died completely, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the emergency lighting strips along the floor. An instant later, an explosion rocked the facility from somewhere deeper inside. In the moment of confusion, Kalira acted with lightning reflexes enhanced by Eleanor's stimulant. She grabbed Marcus and pulled him behind a heavy equipment console as weapon fire erupted from the soldiers by the door, firing blindly into the darkened laboratory. "Eleanor," Marcus whispered, realizing what had happened. "She must have triggered her part of the plan early. We need to reach the detonator," Kalira replied urgently. "This may be our only chance." Through the chaos of shouted orders and sporadic gunfire, they crawled toward the position where Kalira had left the detonation device. Behind them, General Tanner was bellowing commands, ordering his men to restore power and secure the prototype at all costs. They reached the detonator just as emergency power systems engaged, bathing the laboratory in a dim red glow. Across the room, General Tanner spotted them and raised his own sidearm. "Marcus!" he shouted, his voice carrying an authority that had commanded Marcus his entire life. "Stand down. That's an order." Marcus looked up, meeting his father's eyes across the battlefield that the laboratory had become. In that moment, every memory of his childhood, every desperate attempt to earn his father's approval, every compromise of his own principles in the name of duty, all of it crystallized into perfect clarity. "I don't take orders from you anymore," he replied, his voice steady despite the pain of final severance. Then he nodded to Kalira. She activated the detonator, setting a 30-second countdown, just enough time to reach the emergency exit if they moved immediately. The laboratory erupted into renewed chaos as the general realized what they had done. "Move!" Marcus shouted, pulling Kalira toward the secondary exit they had identified in their planning. Behind them, General Tanner was ordering an evacuation, abandoning his attempt to capture them in favor of saving the prototype weapon. They burst through the emergency exit into a service corridor just as more explosions began to rock the facility. Not just their charges, but the secondary explosives placed by Terran's team as well. The entire structure was coming down. "This way," Marcus directed, leading them toward the evacuation route they had established. They encountered scattered resistance, panicked technicians, and a few security personnel, but most were too focused on escaping the collapsing facility to impede their progress. They were nearing the final exit when a section of ceiling collapsed ahead of them, blocking their path with debris. As they frantically searched for an alternate route, a voice called out from behind them. "It seems we're at an impasse, son." They turned to find General Tanner standing several meters away, his uniform now disheveled, a bleeding cut across his forehead. More concerning was the pulse pistol aimed steadily at them. "The facility is lost," he acknowledged, "but the research data remains secure in our backup systems. This is merely a setback, not a defeat." His eyes narrowed. "However, I cannot allow you to leave with whatever information you've collected." Marcus positioned himself partially in front of Kalira. "It's over, Father. We have enough evidence to expose Project Chimera to the entire Federation. How many do you think will support you when they learn what you were planning?" "More than you might expect," the general replied coldly. "But we'll never find out, will we?" He adjusted his aim. "I'll make it quick, Marcus. A soldier's death. It's more than a traitor deserves, but you're still my son. Arthur." The new voice came from beyond the collapsed debris. Through a gap in the rubble appeared Dr. Eleanor, her medical case clutched in one hand, a Federation service weapon in the other. "Eleanor," the general acknowledged, his aim not wavering from Marcus and Kalira. "I should have known you'd be involved in this treason. Still fighting lost causes after all these years." "The only lost cause here is you, Arthur," Eleanor replied, her weapon trained on the general. "Let them go. The facility is coming down around us. There's still time for all of us to escape. So, you can spread your lies about Project Chimera, turn the Federation against its own security interests." The general shook his head. "I think not." In the tense standoff that followed, Kalira suddenly stiffened beside Marcus, a slight tremor running through her body. The stimulant was reaching its limits, he realized. Soon she would crash, leaving them even more vulnerable. "You've lost, Arthur," Eleanor insisted. "The evidence is already being transmitted to multiple secure locations. Senator Vega has received a copy. Admiral Chun as well. People who still believe in the principles the Federation was founded on." Doubt flickered across the general's face for the first time, but his resolve quickly hardened. Then I have nothing left to lose, do I? Everything happened in a blur of motion. The general's finger tightened on the trigger. Marcus lunged forward. Kalira, despite her fading strength, moved to intercept. Eleanor fired through the gap in the debris. A blast of energy seared the air. Someone cried out in pain. Then the corridor shook violently as another explosion tore through the facility, bringing down more of the ceiling between the general and the others. When the dust settled, Marcus found himself on the floor, a searing pain in his shoulder where his father's shot had grazed him. Beside him, Kalira was struggling to rise, while beyond the now completely blocked corridor, there was no sign of General Tanner. "We need to move," Eleanor urged, reaching through the gap to help them. "This way, there's another route through the ventilation system." With Eleanor's help, they navigated the final obstacles and emerged from the collapsing facility just as the main structure imploded behind them, the carefully placed explosives bringing down the entire complex in a controlled demolition that would leave nothing salvageable. They regrouped at the designated extraction point, an abandoned transit terminal several blocks from the facility, where they found Taryn and several of her operatives already waiting. Elias was there too, his nervous energy even more pronounced as he monitored Federation emergency channels on a portable device. "It's done," Marcus confirmed as Eleanor began treating his shoulder wound. "The facility is destroyed, and we have the evidence." "Not without cost," Taryn reported grimly. "We lost 3 operatives in the secondary explosives team, and the human resistance's diversionary attack suffered casualties as well." "My father?" Marcus asked, unsure what answer he was hoping for. Elias looked up from his monitoring device. "Unknown. There's no confirmation of General Tanner among the casualties or survivors being reported." Marcus nodded, accepting the uncertainty. In a way, it was fitting. Their conflict left unresolved, much like the larger war between their peoples. As Eleanor finished bandaging his wound, Marcus became aware that Kalira had grown alarmingly still beside him. Her jade skin had taken on a gray pallor, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. "The stimulant is wearing off," Eleanor explained, immediately turning her attention to the Verdani warrior. "She pushed herself too hard. Combined with her original injuries, her system is in shock. Can you help her?" Marcus asked urgently. Eleanor was already preparing medications from her case. "I can stabilize her, but she needs proper medical care, preferably from Verdani healers who understand her physiology better than I do." The evacuation ship, Taryn, interjected. "It's waiting at the edge of the industrial sector. We need to move quickly. Federation forces will lock down the entire area once they realize what was destroyed." Marcus gathered Kalira in his arms, ignoring the pain in his shoulder as he lifted her. "Lead the way." They moved through the darkening city as sirens wailed in the distance, Federation security forces converging on the smoldering ruins of the Chimera facility. The evacuation ship, a nondescript cargo vessel modified for stealth, was exactly where Taryn had indicated, its engines already powering up as they approached. Once aboard, Eleanor and a Verdani healer took charge of Kalira, moving her to a small medical bay equipped with basic treatment facilities. Marcus paced outside, torn between concern for his unlikely ally and awareness of the critical need to distribute the evidence they had recovered. Elias approached, holding a secure data terminal. "I've established the transmission protocols. The evidence will be simultaneously delivered to 17 separate recipients across the Federation and neutral territories: journalists, ethical scientists, political leaders known to oppose military extremism. Once it's released, there's no putting this back in the box." Marcus nodded grimly. "Do it." With a few commands, Elias initiated the transmissions. "It's done," he confirmed. Within hours, Project Chimera will be exposed throughout the galaxy. The ship shuddered as it lifted off, accelerating through the lower atmosphere toward space. Through a viewport, Marcus watched the Federation city recede below them, the ordered patterns of its levels and sectors growing smaller until they were just points of light in the gathering darkness. He found himself wondering how many of those lights represented people who would be horrified by what their government had planned, and how many would continue to support the xenophobic policies that had made Project Chimera possible. The war wasn't over. Might not be over for generations, but perhaps this one victory could be the beginning of a different path forward. His thoughts were interrupted by Eleanor emerging from the medical bay, her expression cautiously optimistic. "She's stabilized," the doctor reported. "Verdani physiology is remarkably resilient once properly supported. She's asking for you." Marcus found Kalira propped up on a narrow medical berth. Her color somewhat improved, though she still looked exhausted beyond measure. The Verdani healer nodded respectfully to Marcus before withdrawing to give them privacy. "You carried me," Kalira stated, her voice weak but clear. "You would have done the same," Marcus replied, taking a seat beside her berth. A faint smile touched her lips. "Perhaps, though you are considerably heavier than I am." The attempt at humor surprised him. It was the first he had seen from her. "The evidence has been transmitted," he told her. "Whatever happens next, the truth about Project Chimera will be known." Kalira nodded, satisfaction evident in her expression. "Then we have won a significant victory today, not just for my people, but for all those who would have been targeted." "Where will you go now?" Marcus asked, suddenly acutely aware that their paths, so unexpectedly intertwined, would soon diverge again. "To the Verdani High Council," she replied. "They must be informed directly of what we discovered. There will be political considerations." She studied him thoughtfully. "And you?" Marcus hadn't allowed himself to think that far ahead. "I can't go back," he said finally. "Not to the Federation military, certainly, and probably not to Federation space at all once my role in this becomes known." "You could come with me," Kalira suggested, the offer clearly surprising her as much as it did him. "Not as a permanent arrangement, but the High Council would value your direct testimony. And there are those among my people who work toward peace, who would see the value in what you have done." The invitation hung between them, significant in ways that extended far beyond practical considerations. It represented a bridge between their worlds, tentative, fragile, but real. "I would be honored," Marcus said finally, "though I suspect not all Verdani will welcome me as you have." "Not all," Kalira agreed, "but enough, perhaps, to matter." The ship hummed around them as it prepared for the jump to faster-than-light travel, carrying them away from Federation space and toward an uncertain future. Neither Marcus nor Kalira harbored illusions about the challenges ahead. The exposure of Project Chimera would cause upheaval within the Federation, but would not immediately end the war or generations of enmity between their peoples. Yet in this moment, in the quiet of the medical bay, something unprecedented had taken root, understanding across the divide that had separated their species for decades. Not friendship, not quite yet, but respect, trust, perhaps even the beginnings of something more. "Rest now," Marcus said, seeing fatigue overtaking Kalira once more. "We have a long journey ahead." As Kalira drifted into sleep, Marcus remained by her side, contemplating the strange path that had led him from loyal Federation officer to fugitive ally of a Verdani warrior. He had closed his eyes on one life and awakened to another, much as Kalira had closed her eyes expecting death on the battlefield, only to awaken in his care. Whatever came next, whether tentative peace or continued conflict, personal redemption or endless exile, they would face it with the knowledge that barriers once thought impenetrable could indeed be breached, that enemies could become allies, that understanding could grow in the most unlikely soil, and perhaps, in time, that understanding could spread beyond two individuals to encompass the worlds they had left behind. Outside the viewport, stars streaked past as the ship leapt into hyperspace, carrying its improbable passengers toward whatever tomorrow might bring.